The darkness of space was broken by lights that should not have been there. 3 massive ships moved slowly through the solar system, their metal hulls damaged and burning. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built, but they looked broken and tired. Captain Sarah Martinez watched from the command center of Luna Station. Her hands shook as she looked at the alien ships on her screen. She had been in charge of Earth's outer space defense for 5 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "Captain, they're sending a message," said Lieutenant Jones, his voice full of worry. "Put it through," Sarah ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was strange but somehow sad. It spoke in broken English as if the speaker had learned the language quickly. "Earth, people of Earth, we are the Kithara. We come in peace. We need help, please." Sarah felt her heart beat faster. First contact with aliens was supposed to be a happy moment for humanity, but these beings sounded desperate and afraid. "This is Captain Martinez of Earth Defense. What kind of help do you need?" she asked. There was a long pause. Then the alien voice spoke again, and this time Sarah could hear the pain clearly. "We are, how you say, refugees. Our home is gone. The Void Swarm took everything. The Galaxy Council says we are tainted. They will not let us land anywhere. They hunt us like animals." Sarah looked at her team. Every person in the room understood what this meant. These aliens had nowhere to go. They were running from something terrible, and the rest of the galaxy had turned them away. "How many of you are there?" Sarah asked. 3 ships, 20,000 souls. We have children, old ones, sick ones. Our ships are dying. We cannot travel much further. We know you are young species, not part of Galaxy Council. We hope you might be different." The communication ended, leaving the humans in silence. Sarah knew she had to contact Earth immediately. This decision was too big for just one person to make. Within hours, every major leader on Earth was in an emergency meeting. The President of the United Nations, the heads of major countries, and top scientists all gathered to decide humanity's response. The debate was fierce. Many leaders were afraid. What if these aliens were dangerous? What if helping them brought Earth into conflict with this Galaxy Council? What if the Void Swarm followed them here? But Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's top scientist, spoke up. "Look at their ships," she said, pointing to the images on screen. "They're falling apart. These people have lost everything. They're not here to invade us. They're here because they have nowhere else to go." The president of the African Union nodded. "My grandfather was a refugee once. His family fled war and found safety in a new country. Maybe it's time for humanity to return that kindness. But we don't know anything about them," argued the defense minister. "What if they carry diseases? What if they're lying about this Void Swarm?" Dr. Rodriguez pulled up more data. "I've been studying their ships for hours. The damage is real. These vessels have been through terrible battles. And look at this." She pointed to energy readings. "Their life support systems are failing. If we don't help them soon, they'll all die." The room fell quiet. Everyone understood the weight of this moment. Humanity was still new to space travel. They had only built a few space stations and had never traveled beyond their own solar system. These aliens clearly had technology far beyond human understanding. But they were asking for help, not offering conquest. The vote was close, but humanity chose compassion over fear. They would offer the Kithara refuge on Earth. When Sarah sent the message to the alien ships, the response was immediate. The lead Kithara, who called himself Zeth-Hai, could barely speak through his emotions. You will help us, but we have nothing to give you. We are refugees with only broken ships. You don't need to give us anything," Sarah replied. "You just need to be peaceful and we'll help you find a new home." "This is not possible," Zeth-Hai said, his voice full of wonder. "Young species are supposed to be selfish, afraid. The Galaxy Council teaches this. But you offer help to strangers?" Sarah smiled even though she knew the alien couldn't see her. "That's what makes us human." The first Kithara ship landed in the Australian desert 3 days later. As the huge vessel touched down, thousands of humans watched on television around the world. The ship's doors opened slowly, and the first alien stepped onto Earth. Zeth-Hai was tall and thin with blue-gray skin and large eyes that seemed to hold deep sadness. He moved carefully as if he couldn't believe he was finally safe. Behind him came other Kithara, families with children, elderly beings who looked tired, and injured warriors still wearing the marks of their last battle. Dr. Rodriguez was part of the welcome team. As she approached Zethai, she saw him looking up at Earth's blue sky with wonder. "You have never seen anything like this," he said, his English getting better with each word. "In all my travels across the galaxy, I have never met a species that would risk everything for strangers. The Galaxy Council will hear of this. They will not understand." "Let them not understand," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "We're not doing this for them. We're doing it because it's right." Over the next few weeks, more Kythera ships landed in different locations around Earth. The aliens were amazed by human kindness. Volunteers brought food, doctors offered medical help, and families opened their homes to alien refugees. But the Kythera also brought warnings. They told stories of the Void Swarm, a force that consumed entire star systems. They spoke of the Galaxy Council, a group of advanced species that ruled most of the known universe. The Council saw the Kythera as infected by their contact with the Void Swarm and had ordered them to be destroyed on sight. "You must understand," Zethai explained to the UN Council. "By helping us, you have made enemies of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They will come here. They will demand we be handed over. And if you refuse, then we refuse," said the Secretary General firmly. "These refugees are under Earth's protection now." Zethai stared at the human leader in amazement. "Your species has been in space for less than 100 of your years. The Galaxy Council has ruled for millions. They have weapons that can destroy planets, and you would fight them for us." "We would fight them for what's right," the Secretary General replied. "And maybe, just maybe, it's time someone stood up to bullies no matter how powerful they are." As the days passed, human and Kythera began working together. The aliens shared some of their technology to help repair their ships, while humans shared their food, medicine, and most importantly, their hope. But deep in space, sensors were watching. The Galaxy Council had noticed the heat signatures of Kythera ships landing on a small blue planet in a distant system. They were already preparing their response. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the galaxy forever. But for now, in the refugee camps scattered across Earth, humans and aliens worked side by side, proving that kindness could cross any distance between stars. Children from both species played together, learning each other's languages. Human engineers studied Kythera technology with wonder, while Kythera scientists marveled at human creativity and determination. Neither species knew what was coming. But they were no longer alone. 3 months had passed since the Kythera arrived on Earth. The refugee camps had grown into small cities with humans and aliens living side by side. But it wasn't always easy. Dr. Sarah Chen walked through New Haven, the largest refugee settlement in California. She was a young scientist who had volunteered to help with the integration program. Today, like many days, she was dealing with problems. "The water tastes wrong," complained Kythera Elder Vashati through a translation device. "It makes our children sick. Your people promise clean water, but this is not clean," Sarah sighed. This was the 4th complaint about water this week. The Kythera came from a planet with different minerals in their water. Earth's clean water was actually making them ill because their bodies needed certain chemicals that humans considered pollutants. "I understand your concern," Sarah said patiently. "We're working on a solution. Dr. Park thinks she can modify the filtration system to add the minerals you need." Vashati looked skeptical. "Your people try hard, but you do not understand our biology. Perhaps this was a mistake. Perhaps we should leave before we cause more trouble." "No," Sarah said firmly. "We'll figure this out. That's what we do. We solve problems." Not far away, human engineer Mike Rodriguez was having his own challenges. He stood in front of a massive Kythera ship engine, scratching his head. The alien technology was incredible, but it made no sense to human thinking. "Zethai, explain this to me again," Mike said to his Kythera partner. "This engine runs on what you call void energy, but where does the void energy come from?" Zethai, who had become the unofficial leader of the Kythera refugees, pointed to a crystal structure inside the engine. "The crystal sings to the empty spaces between atoms. The song pulls energy from nothingness itself." Mike stared at him. "That's impossible. You can't get energy from nothing. It violates basic physics, and your physics are limited," Zethai said, trying not to sound insulting. "Your species thinks in straight lines. Reality is more like, how do you say, music? Music? Yes, everything vibrates. Atoms vibrate. Space vibrates. We learn to hear the vibrations and use them. Mike looked at the crystal again. He couldn't understand the science, but he could see that it worked. The Kythera had been traveling between stars for thousands of years while humans were still learning to build rockets, but there were success stories too. Dr. Elena Martinez had made breakthrough progress in medical cooperation. She worked in the main medical center, treating both humans and Kythera. The remarkable thing, she explained to her colleague Dr. James, is how similar we are. Their blood is blue instead of red, and they have 2 hearts instead of 1, but the basic biology works the same way. Have you been able to help them? Dr. James asked, more than I expected. It turns out that human antibiotics work very well on Kythera infections, and their healing techniques are helping our patients recover faster from surgery. She pointed to a human patient in bed. Mrs. Thompson here broke her hip. Normally she'd be in bed for months, but the Kythera doctor, Heeltar, taught us a bone-strengthening technique. She'll be walking next week. In the children's area, the integration was happening most naturally. Human children and young Kythera played together, creating their own mixed language that adults couldn't understand. Ball! Ball! Shouted 8-year-old Tommy, throwing a soccer ball to his friend, a young Kythera named Zipko. Zipko caught the ball with all 4 of his arms and kicked it back with his feet. Goal! Make goal! He said in English mixed with Kythera words. Their games had no rules that made sense to adults, but the children didn't care. They were teaching each other their languages, sharing their food, and creating friendships that crossed species. Mrs. Patterson, a teacher helping with the children's program, watched with amazement. They don't see differences the way we do, she told her husband that evening. To Tommy, Zipko is just his friend who happens to have blue skin and extra arms. But not all humans were happy with the situation. In the town next to New Haven, a group called Humanity First was holding protests. These aliens are changing our world, shouted their leader, Robert Kane, to a crowd of supporters. They're using our resources, taking our jobs, and bringing their alien diseases to our children. What jobs? Called out someone from the crowd. Most of them don't even speak English yet. They will, Kane replied angrily. And when they do, their advanced technology will make us all useless. Mark my words, in 10 years humans will be the refugees on our own planet. The protests made Sarah Chen sad, but she understood the fear. Change was always scary, especially change this big. She decided to invite some of the protesters to visit New Haven and see what was really happening. I don't want to meet any aliens, Kane said when Sarah contacted him. I want them off our planet. Just come for 1 hour, Sarah asked. See what we're actually doing here. If you still want to protest after that, at least you'll know what you're protesting against. Kane agreed, mostly because he wanted to find evidence to support his arguments. But when he arrived at New Haven, he didn't find what he expected. Sarah took him to the engineering section first, where Mike Rodriguez was working with HFY on a new water purification system. This system, Mike explained excitedly, can clean water better than anything we've ever built. But the amazing thing is, HFY designed it using human materials. He took our technology and made it work better. Kane watched as the two worked together, sharing ideas and building something neither could have created alone. But this makes humans unnecessary, he said. No, Mike replied. Look, HFY is brilliant with energy systems, but he thinks in ways that are completely alien to me. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. He wanted to make this water purifier powered by his void energy crystals. But I convinced him to use solar power instead because we have lots of sun and limited crystals. HFY nodded. Mike thinks in practical ways that help me. I can make beautiful designs, but he makes them work in real world. Together, we make better things than either could make alone. Sarah then took Kane to the medical center, where Dr. Martinez was working with Kythera healers. Mr. Kane, Dr. Martinez said, I want you to meet someone. She introduced him to an elderly human man named George, who was sitting up in bed looking healthy and happy. 2 months ago, Dr. Martinez explained, George had a heart attack. With human medicine alone, he would have been disabled for life. But Heeltar taught us a technique that helped George's heart repair itself. George smiled at Kane. I was ready to die, son. These alien folks saved my life. I don't care what planet they come from. Kane felt confused. This wasn't what he expected to see. But what about the diseases? What about them taking over our world? The only disease we've seen, Dr. Martinez replied, is homesickness. And as for taking over, look around. They're refugees living in our camps, grateful for our help. Does this look like an invasion to you? By the end of his visit, Kane was quiet and thoughtful. He still had concerns, but he couldn't deny what he'd seen with his own eyes. That evening, Sarah found herself in the common area with Zethai and several other Kithara. They were sharing stories about their home planet, which had been destroyed by the Void Swarm. We had cities that floated in the clouds, Zethai said sadly. Gardens that grew in zero gravity, music that could be seen as well as heard. All gone now. I'm sorry, Sarah said. But maybe you can build something new here. Something different but still beautiful. Zethai looked at her with his large dark eyes. You humans are strange. Most species in galaxy think only of themselves. But you seem to care about everyone. Not everyone, Sarah admitted. You met Mr. Kane today. There are others like him. Some humans are afraid of change. Fear is natural, Zethai replied. Even Kithara feel fear. But your species chooses to help despite fear. That is, how do you say remarkable? Maybe, Sarah said. Or maybe we're just too stubborn to give up on doing the right thing. As the months continued, the bonds between humans and Kithara grew stronger. They learned from each other, helped each other, and slowly began to trust each other. But in the depths of space, ships were moving. The Galaxy Council had decided that Earth's defiance could not be tolerated. The little planet that dared to shelter the infected Kithara would learn the price of challenging galactic law. The peaceful days were numbered, but no one on Earth knew it yet. They were too busy building something new together, a friendship between species that would soon be tested in ways none of them could imagine. The first sign of trouble came from the Deep Space Monitoring Station on Mars. Dr. Kevin Park was working the night shift when the sensors detected something impossible. That can't be right, he muttered, checking the readings again. The instruments showed massive energy signatures moving toward the solar system. But these weren't normal ships. The energy patterns were wrong, chaotic, like nothing in any database. Kevin called Earth immediately. Control, this is Mars Station. I'm reading multiple large objects approaching the outer solar system. ETA, approximately 72 hours. Captain Martinez, now promoted to head of solar defense, took the call personally. What kind of objects, Kevin? I don't know, Captain. They're big, but they don't move like ships. They move like living things. And there's something else. They're absorbing light. Space around them is getting darker. Sarah Chen was in New Haven when the alert came through. She ran to find Zethai, knowing that the Kithara would understand what was happening. She found him in the engineering bay, working on a new water recycling system with Mike Rodriguez. When she told him about the approaching objects, Zethai's blue skin turned pale gray. No, he whispered. Not here. Not so soon. What is it? Mike asked, seeing the fear in his alien friend's eyes. Void Swarm, Zethai said, his voice shaking. They have found us. I hoped we had more time. I hoped... He stopped talking and closed his eyes in pain. Sarah felt her heart sink. How bad is it? The Void Swarm does not think like you or me, Zethai explained. It is one mind made of billions of creatures. It feeds on energy, on life itself. When it consumes a planet, nothing is left but empty space. We'll fight them, Mike said firmly. Earth has weapons. We have ships. Zethai looked at his human friend with sad eyes. The swarm has destroyed civilizations that had been traveling the stars for millions of years. Your species has been in space for less than 100 years. What can you do that we could not? But Mike's jaw was set with determination. We can try. Within hours, every major leader on Earth was in emergency session. The UN building was filled with voices speaking in dozens of languages, all asking the same question. How do you fight something that has never been defeated? We need to evacuate, said the president of the European Federation. Get our people off Earth before this swarm arrives. Evacuate to where? Asked the African Union representative. We have 3 space stations and a small Mars colony. We can't evacuate 8 billion people. Then we need to hide, suggested the Asian Alliance leader. Maybe if we turn off all our technology, the swarm won't notice us. Zethai, who had been invited to the meeting, shook his head sadly. The swarm does not hunt with technology. It hunts with hunger. It can sense life from across star systems. There is nowhere to hide. The room fell silent. Finally, the UN Secretary General spoke. Then we fight. We may not win, but we fight. But even as Earth prepared for war, another threat appeared. 3 massive ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. These were not the chaotic energy signatures of the Void Swarm. These were elegant, powerful vessels that spoke of advanced civilization. The Galaxy Council had arrived. The lead ship sent a message to Earth in perfect English. Primitive species of the third planet, you are harboring infected refugees. By order of the Galaxy Council, you will surrender the Kythera immediately or face the consequences. Captain Martinez responded from Luna Station. This is Earth Defense Command. The Kythera are refugees under our protection. We will not surrender them. There was a pause. Then the alien voice spoke again, and this time it sounded amused. Your species does not understand what it faces. The Void Swarm approaches your system. We offer you a choice. Give us the infected Kythera and we will escort your people to safety. Refuse and we will leave you to face the swarm alone. What about the Kythera? Captain Martinez asked. The infected must be destroyed. It is galactic law. Sarah Chen listened to the transmission from New Haven and felt anger burn in her chest. These so-called advanced beings were offering to save humans, but only if Earth abandoned the refugees who had come to them for help. She looked around the refugee settlement. Human and Kythera children were playing together. Doctors from both species were working side by side in the medical center. Engineers were sharing knowledge that would benefit everyone. Never, she said out loud. We will never abandon them. Her words were echoed around the world. Despite the fear, despite the impossible odds, humanity made its choice. They would stand with the Kythera, even if it meant facing both the Void Swarm and the Galaxy Council. The Council ships established a blockade around the solar system. No ships could enter or leave. Earth was cut off from the rest of the galaxy, left to face the approaching darkness alone. Why? Zethai asked Sarah, as they watched the Council ships on the monitors. Why would your people choose certain death for us? We are strangers. We brought this danger to you. Sarah looked at her alien friend, this being who had become like family to her and so many others. Because that's what family does. They stand together. Family? Zethai repeated the word slowly, as if tasting something new. Family, Sarah confirmed. You're not strangers anymore. You're part of us now. The next few days were filled with desperate preparation. Human military forces, small and primitive by galactic standards, prepared to face enemies beyond their understanding. But they had advantages the galaxy had never seen. In the engineering bays, human creativity was working with Kythera technology to create new weapons. Mike Rodriguez and his team had figured out how to use void energy crystals to power human railguns, creating weapons that could strike targets at incredible distances. The Galaxy Council uses precise, calculated strategies, Zethai explained to the human military leaders. They have fought wars for millions of years. They know every battle tactic, every defensive strategy. What about the Void Swarm? Asked General Thompson. The Swarm is worse. It learns from every battle, adapts to every weapon. It has absorbed the knowledge of thousands of defeated civilizations. General Thompson, a veteran of Earth's last major war, smiled grimly. Then maybe it's time they met something they've never seen before. What do you mean? Chaos, my alien friend. Pure, beautiful chaos. Human military doctrine had always been different from what the galaxy expected. Where other species planned careful, logical battles, humans specialized in unpredictable tactics, desperate gambits, and strategies that made no sense until they worked. We're not going to fight them the way they expect, General Thompson explained to his staff. We're going to fight them the way humans fight. We're going to be stubborn, crazy, and too stupid to know when we're beaten. As the Void Swarm drew closer, its dark tendrils began probing the outer edges of the solar system. Space itself seemed to bend and twist where the swarm passed. Planets in distant systems had been consumed, leaving nothing but empty void. But the swarm had never encountered anything like the solar system it was approaching. It had never faced a species that would protect strangers at the cost of their own lives. It had never fought beings who could look at impossible odds and decide to fight anyway. On Earth, in the refugee settlements, humans and Kythera worked together as the darkness approached. They knew they might all die in the coming battle. But they also knew they wouldn't die alone. Sarah Chen stood with Zethai on a hill overlooking New Haven as the sun set on what might be their last peaceful evening. Below them, children of two species played games in languages that mixed human and alien words. Whatever happens, Sarah said. I'm glad we met. Zethai looked at her with his large, dark eyes. In all my travels across the galaxy, in all the civilizations I have seen, I have never witnessed anything like human courage. Perhaps that will make the difference. Maybe, Sarah replied. Or maybe we'll all die trying. But at least we'll die as family. Above them, the stars began to disappear one by one as the void swarm drew closer. The Galaxy Council ships maintained their blockade, waiting to see if the primitive humans would change their minds when faced with certain destruction. They didn't understand humanity at all. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, not because of superior technology or ancient wisdom, but because of something much simpler and much more powerful: hope, stubbornness, and the crazy idea that doing the right thing was more important than survival. The void swarm had consumed thousands of worlds, but it had never faced anything like Earth. And Earth, for all its youth and inexperience, had something the galaxy had forgotten: the courage to fight for strangers, the wisdom to know that some things were worth dying for, and the stubborn human belief that there was always a way to win, no matter how impossible the odds appeared. The darkness was coming, but Earth would not face it quietly. The void swarm hit the outer solar system like a wave of living darkness. The dwarf planet Pluto simply vanished, consumed so completely that not even dust remained. Space itself seemed to scream as the swarm's tendrils reached toward the inner planets. Captain Martinez watched from Luna Station as her instruments went crazy. "Status report," she called out. "We've lost contact with the outer monitoring stations," Lieutenant Jones reported, his voice shaking. "The swarm is—" "Captain, it's bigger than we thought. It's the size of a moon, and it's growing." On Earth, every military base was on high alert. General Thompson stood in the command center deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, surrounded by screens showing the approaching horror. "Launch the first wave," he ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Humanity's most advanced warships, tiny compared to the alien vessels but swift and determined, raced toward the edge of the solar system. They carried weapons enhanced with Kythera technology, missiles powered by void energy, railguns that could punch through asteroid belts, and nuclear warheads that burned hotter than stars. The ships opened fire as soon as they entered range. Explosions lit up the darkness of space like fireworks. For a moment, it seemed like the attack might work. Then the void swarm simply absorbed the explosions. The light, the heat, the energy of the weapons, all of it was consumed and added to the swarm's growing mass. "Direct hit on target," reported Captain Davis from the lead attack ship. But it's not working. It's eating our weapons." "Fall back," General Thompson ordered. All ships retreat to the asteroid belt. But the swarm was learning. Dark tentacles reached out faster than light, wrapping around 3 human ships before they could escape. The vessels and their crews were absorbed in seconds, becoming part of the hungry darkness. In New Haven, Zethai felt the deaths like physical pain. "It grows stronger with each life it takes," he told Sarah and Mike, who were working frantically in the engineering bay. "Soon it will be too powerful to stop." "Then we don't let it get stronger," Mike said, pulling up holographic displays of the solar system. "What if we don't fight it directly? What if we confuse it instead?" "Confuse it how?" Sarah asked. Mike pointed to the asteroid belt. "The swarm expects logical military tactics, right? Fleet formations, coordinated attacks, defensive positions. What if we give it chaos instead?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been listening from the medical bay. "Chaos," she repeated thoughtfully. "The swarm is a hive mind. It thinks as one being. But what if we forced it to think as individuals?" Zethai looked confused. "I do not understand." Sarah's eyes lit up with a crazy idea. "The cultural broadcasts. We've been sending Earth's music, art, languages to the refugee ships. What if we broadcast that directly into the swarm?" "That is impossible," Zethai said. "The swarm does not have receivers for such signals." "It doesn't need receivers," Mike replied, grinning. "It absorbs energy, right? All energy, including radio waves, television signals, internet data. What if we overload it with human culture?" The plan was insane, but that's what made it perfect. Within hours, every broadcasting station on Earth was retooled for maximum power. Radio telescopes designed to listen to distant stars were converted to transmit instead. But the real genius was what they chose to broadcast. Not just one signal, not just one culture. Everything. Rock music from the United States mixed with traditional drums from Africa. Japanese anime blended with Brazilian soap operas. Indian classical music merged with Irish folk songs. Poetry in 300 languages. Comedy shows that made no sense to outsiders. Love songs that spoke of emotions no hive mind could understand. The chaos of human diversity, broadcast at full power directly into the Void Swarm's consciousness, initiating cultural bombardment in 3, 2, 1. Now, Sarah announced. The effect was immediate. The swarm's perfect, coordinated movement began to falter. Its dark tendrils twisted in confusion as 8 billion individual human thoughts crashed into its collective mind. It's working, Captain Martinez reported from Luna Station. The swarm has stopped advancing. It's writhing like it's in pain. But the Galaxy Council was not impressed. The lead council ship sent a transmission to Earth. Primitive species, your pathetic attempts only delay the inevitable. Surrender the infected Cathera now, or we will assist the swarm in your destruction. General Thompson's response was brief and unprintable. The Council ships moved to attack Earth directly, forcing the planet to fight on 2 fronts. But humanity had been preparing for this moment. Launch Operation Asteroid Storm, General Thompson commanded. In the asteroid belt, human engineers had been working around the clock with Cathera technology. They had turned hundreds of asteroids into kinetic weapons, powered by void energy and guided by human determination. The rocks moved faster than anything the Galaxy Council expected. Enhanced by alien technology but guided by human unpredictability, they struck the Council ships from impossible angles, following flight paths that made no mathematical sense. How are they calculating these trajectories? Demanded the Council Admiral as his ship shook under impact. These vectors violate basic physics. Sir, replied his tactical officer, I don't think they're calculating them. I think they're guessing. The Admiral couldn't believe what he was hearing. Guessing? They're firing planet-killer weapons by guessing? Yes, sir. And somehow they keep hitting us. Meanwhile, the cultural bombardment was driving the Void Swarm into chaos. The hive mind that had conquered galaxies was struggling to process the contradiction of human existence. How could one species contain so many different thoughts? How could they disagree with themselves and still work together? How could they create beauty and ugliness, love and hate, wisdom and foolishness all at the same time? The swarm's tendrils began turning on each other, as different parts of its consciousness absorbed different aspects of human culture. One section was trying to sing opera while another was attempting to understand why humans found pictures of cats amusing. The swarm is fragmenting, Zethai reported in amazement. Its unity is breaking down. But how is this possible? Sarah smiled as she watched the readings. Because we're not unified. We're 8 billion different people who somehow managed to work together anyway. The swarm can't understand that because it's never met anything like us. But the battle was far from over. Both the Void Swarm and the Galaxy Council were adapting to human tactics. The swarm began filtering out the cultural signals, while the Council ships started using unpredictable attack patterns of their own. We need something bigger, Mike said, studying the tactical displays. Something that will finish this. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her medical station. What if we don't try to destroy them? What if we try to heal them instead? Everyone stared at her. Heal them? General Thompson asked. Think about it, Elena continued. The Void Swarm consumes everything because it's hungry. It's like a cancer that can't stop growing. But what if we could teach it to be satisfied? And the Galaxy Council? Sarah asked. They're bullies who've never been challenged. Maybe it's time someone taught them that there are different ways to solve problems. The final phase of the plan was the most dangerous yet. Instead of broadcasting chaos, Earth began transmitting something else. Human emotions. Love, friendship, satisfaction, contentment. The feeling of a full stomach after a good meal. The peace of sleep after a hard day's work. The joy of seeing children play safely. The Void Swarm, which had never known satisfaction, suddenly experienced what it felt like to be full. For the first time in millions of years, its hunger began to fade. At the same time, human ships approached the Galaxy Council vessels not with weapons, but with offers to talk. They broadcast messages of cooperation, of learning from each other, of building something better together. This is impossible, the Council Admiral muttered as he watched human ships offering aid to damaged swarm fragments instead of destroying them. They should be trying to kill their enemies. Sir. his tactical officer said quietly. Maybe they don't see them as enemies anymore. The turning point came when a damaged section of the Void Swarm, separated from the main mass and filled with human emotions of compassion, began trying to heal the council ships it had been fighting moments before. The Admiral stared at his screens in disbelief. The swarm is helping us? On Earth, Sarah Chen watched the impossible scene unfold. Void Swarm fragments were offering energy to damaged council ships, while human vessels provided medical aid to both sides. I don't think anyone has ever tried to teach the swarm to be kind before, she said to Zethai. In a million years of galactic history, Zethai replied with wonder. No species has ever responded to the swarm with anything but fear and weapons. You have shown it something new. The battle ended not with explosions, but with understanding. The Void Swarm, its hunger finally satisfied by human emotions of contentment, began to change. Instead of consuming planets, it started nurturing them, feeding energy back into dying stars and helping barren worlds bloom with life. The Galaxy Council, faced with the impossible sight of their greatest enemy, transformed into a force for healing, realized that their millions of years of wisdom might not be as complete as they thought. How? The Admiral asked when he finally spoke with General Thompson. How did you do what we could not do in 1,000 millennia? General Thompson smiled. We treated them like they were people instead of monsters. Sometimes that makes 6 months after the battle, the galaxy was a very different place. The news of Earth's impossible victory had spread to every civilized world, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees who had heard the story and could barely believe it. In the grand halls of the Galaxy Council headquarters, emergency sessions had been running for weeks. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years were trying to understand how everything they knew had been proven wrong by a planet full of primitives. The reports must be exaggerated, insisted Council Elder Vexistar, his scaled skin shifting from green to angry red. No species achieves space travel and immediately defeats the Void Swarm. It is impossible. The evidence is clear, replied Elder Sithra, her telepathic voice carrying exhaustion. Our own ships were there. I have the Admiral's full report. The humans not only defeated the swarm, they changed it into something helpful. Then they are dangerous beyond measure, Vextar declared. A species that can alter the fundamental nature of the swarm could threaten all galactic order. But Elder Morthak, oldest of the council, spoke with a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. Or perhaps they offer us a chance to build something better than order. When did we become so afraid of change that we would rather fight a war than try a new idea? The debate continued, but it was interrupted by an urgent message. A fleet of ships was approaching council space, flying under a flag no one recognized. A blue and green circle on a white background, with smaller symbols around it representing dozens of different species. The Freehaven Coalition had arrived. Captain Sarah Martinez, now promoted to Admiral of the Coalition Fleet, stood on the bridge of the flagship New Hope. Beside her stood Zethai, who had become the Coalition's chief technology officer, and representatives from a dozen other species that had joined the movement. Council headquarters is requesting we identify ourselves, reported Lieutenant Jones, who had become Martinez's communications officer. Tell them we're here to talk, Martinez replied, and tell them we're not going away until they listen. The Coalition fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships flew alongside repaired Kithara vessels. Modified Void Swarm fragments, now calling themselves healers, moved in formation with ships from species that had been refugees just months before. On Earth, the changes had been just as dramatic. The refugee settlements had grown into thriving cities where humans and aliens worked together on projects that amazed both species. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the center of New Geneva, the first truly integrated human-alien city. Around her, the impossible had become everyday reality. Human children played with young beings from 6 different species. Restaurants served food that combined Earth ingredients with alien cooking techniques. Universities taught courses in interspecies communication and multidimensional physics. Dr. Chen called out her assistant, a young Kithara named Lixara. The delegation from the Thek Empire has arrived. They're requesting asylum, Sarah sighed. This was the 4th group of refugees this week. Word had spread throughout the galaxy that Earth was a place where anyone could find safety, and beings were coming from everywhere. The Thek were an interesting case. Their empire had collapsed not from war, but from their own rigid social system that couldn't adapt to changing times. Now their survivors were seeking a place where they could learn new ways of living. Set them up in temporary housing, Sarah instructed, and get them enrolled in the integration program. They'll need to learn that cooperation works better than domination. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy with these changes. The hegemony of Kresh, a militaristic empire that had been allied with the Galaxy Council, was gathering its fleets for war. These humans are a virus, declared Supreme Commander Thaxis to his war council. They spread their dangerous ideas of equality and cooperation. If we do not stop them now, they will corrupt the entire galactic order. Supreme Commander, said his intelligence officer carefully, our reports suggest that species who adopt human methods become more prosperous, not less. Perhaps we should study their techniques before we attack them. Thaxis's 4 eyes glowed red with rage. Prosperity means nothing without proper hierarchy. Without strong leaders to guide the weak, there is only chaos. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the natural order. But the hegemony's plans were interrupted by an unexpected development. Several of their own colonies had declared independence and requested protection from the Free Haven Coalition. They claim we oppress them, Thaxis snarled. They want freedom and self-determination. These are human ideas poisoning our people's minds. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Martinez received the request for help from the Kresh colonies. The decision wasn't easy. Protecting these rebels would mean making enemies of a major galactic power. What do you think? She asked Zethai as they studied the star charts. The Kresh colonies have been abused for generations, Zethai replied. Their people are slaves in all but name, but helping them will mean war with the hegemony. And if we don't help them, then we become the same as the Galaxy Council. Safe, powerful, and willing to ignore suffering when it's convenient. Martinez made her decision. Send a message to the colonies. Tell them the coalition is on the way. The Battle of Kresh Prime would become legendary, not for its violence but for its strangeness. The coalition fleet arrived expecting a traditional space battle, but instead they broadcast human culture directly to the hegemony forces. The effect was immediate and chaotic. Kresh soldiers who had lived their entire lives under strict military discipline suddenly heard jazz music, comedy shows, and poetry about individual freedom. Fighter pilots found themselves humming pop songs instead of focusing on attack patterns. What is happening to our forces? Thaxis demanded as his perfectly organized fleet began breaking formation. They're dancing, sir. His tactical officer reported in disbelief. The crew of the Star Destroyer is performing something they call a conga line. But the real change came when coalition ships began offering aid to damaged hegemony vessels instead of finishing them off. Kresh soldiers who had expected to die in glorious battle instead found themselves being rescued by the enemies they had been sent to destroy. Why? Asked a wounded Kresh pilot as human medics treated his injuries. Why help us when we came to kill you? Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who was serving with the Coalition Medical Corps, smiled as she bandaged his wounds. Because you're hurt and we can help. That's enough reason. The pilot stared at her in confusion. In his entire life, no one had ever helped him without expecting something in return. The hegemony war lasted only 3 days, not because one side defeated the other, but because the Kresh soldiers began refusing to fight people who kept trying to save their lives. This is not victory, Thaxis protested as his own officers asked for peace negotiations. This is not how war works. Maybe that's the problem, replied his former second-in-command who had spent the last day listening to human music and reading poetry about hope. Maybe war doesn't work anymore. As news of the coalition's victories spread, more species began asking to join, but membership came with requirements. No slavery, no oppression of other species, and a commitment to helping refugees and outcasts. The Galaxy Council found itself in an impossible position. Half their member species were leaving to join the coalition, while the other half demanded military action against the human infection. Elder Morthak finally made a proposal that shocked everyone. What if we asked to join them? The silence in the council chambers was deafening. Join them? Vextar gasped. We are the Galaxy Council. We have ruled for millions of years. They should be asking to join us. And how has our rule worked out? Morthak asked calmly. We allowed the Void Swarm to consume thousands of worlds because we were too proud to ask for help. We exiled the Cathara because they were inconvenient. We maintained order through fear instead of justice. Perhaps it is time to learn from someone else. The vote was close, but the Council agreed to send a diplomatic mission to Earth. When their ships arrived in the solar system, they were amazed by what they found. The space around Earth was busy with traffic from 100 different species. Trade ships, refugee vessels, exploration craft, and research stations all worked together in a complex dance of cooperation. How do they coordinate all of this without central control? Asked the Council's chief navigator. They don't, replied the lead diplomat, Elder Caithlan. Each ship makes its own decisions, but they all work together anyway. It should be chaos, but somehow it functions perfectly. The meeting between the Galaxy Council and Earth's leaders took place on Luna Station, neutral ground that both sides could accept. The Council delegation expected to negotiate with a single ruler or small group of leaders. Instead, they found themselves facing representatives from every major human culture, plus delegates from all the refugee species that had found homes on Earth. We don't have an emperor or supreme leader, explained UN Secretary General Rodriguez. We make decisions together even when we disagree. But how do you maintain order? Asked Elder Vextar.